we need a financial system. And we can't use the traditional financial system because the banks are totally controlled by Lukashenko's regime.
So you're trying to create like a digital democracy,
Exactly.
right? Instead of the dysfunctional democracy, so to speak,
Exactly.
that your country had. And so is the goal really to overthrow him?
Totally.
I mean,
and reclaim the territory.
hello and welcome to Okcoin Live. I'm Natalie Brunnell and I'm here in Oslo for the Oslo Freedom Forum, where I'm excited to have a guest in person with me, Jaroslav Likhachevsky. He is the founder of the Belarus Solidarity Foundation, which we're going to learn all about. So Jaroslav, thanks so much for joining me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Okay, so first of all, for the viewers that have never heard of the Belarus Solidarity Foundation, what is it? Tell us about your work.
Oh, it's all started back in 2020, where we had a political crisis, escalated a lot. So we had a political crisis for almost 30 years now, with the same one guy calls himself president abusing the power. But in 2020, it all went completely wrong, starting with the COVID pandemic, which is managed awfully in Belarus. So Lukashenko decided to not recognize any of the COVID, and it led to multiple deaths, including healthcare professionals, doctors, and that's when the wave of Belarusian solidarity started. First supporting doctors, and then political campaign followed. We had a president election in August 2020, which Lukashenko completely lost, but elections were rigged by him, and he started quite severe repression in country. And we need to launch a new fund in order to support civil society activists and pro-democratic movement, and that's how Belarus Solidarity Foundation appeared.
Okay, so let's back it up just one step, because I think a lot of people might be watching and they don't know the political history of Belarus. So I know you mentioned the president's name. Can you just talk a little bit about the structure and how we got to this point? Because clearly there's been a lot of corruption, which led to the government protests that maybe people heard about on the news, and ultimately is what your work is involved in, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to be an interesting story, because it's like pretty in the middle of Europe, but after the Soviet Union collapsed and all of the ex-Soviet states declared their independence, in a couple of years after we declared independence, we held the first president election. And it was our first experience in democracy since a long, long time ago. And we elected some guy who was populist, and he promised to raise up economy and make Belarus great again and that kind of stuff. So people believed them and voted for him for the first and for the last time. Because in the next following years, he totally destroyed the parliament, he totally destroyed the constitution.
And is this the current president?
Yes, that's the current president.
What's his name?
His name is Alexander Lukashenko.
Okay.
We do not consider him as a president long ago, but he's still abusing power since mid-90s. Lots of his political opponents either have been killed or imprisoned or driven out of the country. And as he suppresses all of the opposition for such a long time, it's very difficult to strike back on him and to reclaim our democracy. And usually it happens once in 5 years during the political campaigns. And 2020 was huge in these terms. So we never ever had these big protests on the streets. It was 100% peaceful protests, so no violence, which was quite unique.
And it was COVID that sparked those protests initially?
The COVID sparked the political situation, and then it was 3 quite bright political opponents on the run. Lukashenko jailed 2 of them a couple of months before the election day, and made the 3rd one to leave the country. And then Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who's wife of one of the candidates, took the lead, and like it's actually very stupid. Lukashenko, like an ancient medieval guy, he doesn't consider women as an opponent. So like it was in the third movie of Lord of the Rings, where one of the Nangles said, "No living man can kill me," and then the girl said, "Like, I'm not the man," and stepped him in the eye. So it was exactly our story. So it was a girl who defeated this Goliath, and yeah, it was great, and all of the countries supported her. So we managed to build a platform for alternative counting of the votes, and we know that she got around 62% on the election day. So it was impressive victory.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting story because Svetlana is actually here at the conference speaking. You're one of the speakers. And for those not familiar, there was a person, her husband was running, and the current leader threw him into jail.
Right.
So she took over. She has no political experience. She's a mom, right? Yeah. And she won by fair vote. Yeah. She got the majority vote to be elected, but he did not allow that. So she's exiled now, right? To Lithuania or where?
Lithuania, yeah.
Lithuania. Wow. I mean, what do you think about that whole story? I mean, it's incredible. It's like a movie.
Yeah, like I've been involved in the whole of the story for quite a long time, and we had a team shooting for Netflix. So like they've been shooting whole of the story. Of course, it's not published yet because the stories keep going. But yeah, I believe one day we'll see maybe a documentary, maybe a fiction film about it. So
incredible. Yeah. Okay, so before we get to what you're going to be talking about, can you describe, I mean, what inspired your work, and what is the life for the average person in Belarus like under this oppressive regime?
I'd say the main word here is poor. People live in quite poor in Belarus, and it's made in purpose because it's much easier to manipulate poor people than the rich ones. And that's Lukashenko is doing to our own people for decades. And also why all of the situation even could be possible, because during the last maybe 10 years, quite a new class grown, that young people who work mostly in software development and technology, and they integrated into international economy, international market and Western world. They are earning high above the average in the country, and they are able to think about something bigger, but not just their bellies and a roof above their head. Yeah, I mean, just time passed for this kind of autocrats and dictators, and here's the new way for people changing the world and changing the country.
So what is your foundation doing? How does it help directly on the ground?
We had initially two initiatives. So we've been addressing particular problems. Tens of thousands of people been arrested and jailed. Lots of them have been beaten, tortured, some been killed, and some medical expenses, some financial support for them was needed. And that was our partnering organization called By Help. And at a certain point we realized that people who going onto the streets protesting against the regime, they're going to be repressed in various ways. and the easiest way to repress people in Belarus, because lots of economy is state-owned. There are lots of old factories owned by the state and state enterprises. So what happened before and what we expected this time, that regime will just start firing people and kicking them onto the streets. And we decided to launch a foundation that will support these fired people, like at least for 3 months' salary, to give them a chance to have a new start. And obviously, in terms of the size of the repression, we were never able to help everyone, but at least we've built an atmosphere that someone is standing for you, someone would help you, and someone will find a way to help you. In 2020, 2021, we helped thousands and thousands of people, and it helped to bring the protest stronger and to strengthen and empower the movement itself. And we had different programs. We had a program supporting police officers who were willing to leave their jobs, to leave the service, in order not to conduct crimes, basically, because what they've been doing, it was a crime, and they're still doing it. So we kind of opened the door for them. Another organization, so it was a huge solidarity movement. Our foundation was just one of the initiatives, but it was huge. And another initiative provided them with some kind of education, like software development or quality assurance or English lessons, so on and so forth. So they could find another job, but not just beating people on the streets. And our foundation has been providing them with some funds for the first couple of months of learning and looking for the new job. We've also been supporting people leaving the country who've been chased by regime and who've been under pursuit. They've been leaving to Ukraine, Lithuania, Poland, so we had a program for them to support them for the first time, until they find new jobs in a new place. We've been supporting people who've been fired inside of the country, and we've also been supporting people who've been striking on the state-owned enterprises and factories. So sometimes they were not fired, but their salary have been cut off twice, and they're not getting too much of the salary, so if it's cut, they have nothing to feed their family with. So we provided them support also. So yeah, it was lots of different stuff, but that's the main.
Yeah, so you have lots of different tentacles that are sort of moving around. Well, this show being Okcoin live, I mean, how is crypto helping? Because I know one of the most important things is to provide financial freedom to the people that are there. So is crypto helping?
Yes. Yeah. Before summer 2020, I was quite crypto skeptic because, once we've been young software engineers, attending hackathons, and we were always divided to whom are willing to do something with an AI and to whom willing to do something with crypto. So I'm AI guy. My core business is AI in healthcare. But then we realized that if we'll keep using traditional ways of transferring money, it's easily tracked by the government. Because all of the, it's also a very important point, in autocratic and dictatorship countries, all of the financial system 100% controlled by the state. So they can see all of the transactions, They can take any of your money any moment they like, so it's just not safe. On top of it, at the certain point, the state proclaimed us as an extremist organization. That means that anyone who donates, he's funding extremist organization. Everyone who's taking money from us, they're part of extremist organization. Wow. That's why we had to build a safe way of collecting and distributing funds. And yeah, obviously crypto was the first idea. Why not? We tried, we loved it, we're still using it.
Okay, so how has that specifically helped? Do you get donations from people all over the world in, let's say, Bitcoin, and then you're able to distribute the funds directly to people in Belarus?
We collected donation both in crypto and in fiat.
Okay.
And I should say it was much more donations in fiat than in crypto. But then, in order to distribute money into Belarus, we just exchanged it on a cryptocurrency exchange, and we've been distributing Bitcoins, and it was very interesting experience because people who had never ever heard about existing of cryptocurrencies, okay, they maybe heard about the Bitcoins, but they probably thought that it's some kind of golden coin that you're keep in your pocket. They've learned extremely quickly how to use crypto wallet, how to get Bitcoins, how to pay with Bitcoins, how to exchange Bitcoins into fiat money and vice versa.
And is it easy to do that? Is it easy to convert Bitcoin into the local currency so that they can actually go to the grocery store and purchase something that they need?
We had a number of ways of doing this.
Okay.
And the most convenient in our case, we found peer-to-peer exchanges. So it's not traceable at all.
Right.
And it's very useful in our case.
Wow.
But there were more ways. I don't know if I want to talk about them publicly, but like first we learned these ways how to exchange crypto in the most efficient way, and then we just built a manual, and we've been teaching these people who receive the money from us. So we've been educating them in that way. So we have at least several thousand people in Belarus who now learned how to use crypto.
Well, so being sort of a new convert yourself to this technology and being maybe skeptical in the past, where do you see the future of Bitcoin? Right now, the price is obviously extremely volatile. It's crashed more than half from its all-time high. So where do you see this going and helping people in different countries with being a tool for human rights?
The prices doesn't bother me a lot, to be honest, because what we learned for ourselves, that's a new dimension of financial freedom, and it's extremely valuable. And like the foundation itself was the very first step on our long way. So after we learned how to collect money in crypto and collect in fiat, exchange into crypto and distribute into Belarus and other way around, we thought like, okay, we have this donation and solidarity economy, but we can launch a service economy also next to it. And at a certain point, we had a huge need of launching various services. For example, one day Lukashenko went a little bit crazier than he was the day before, and he started firing hundreds of doctors in Belarus. It's never been a good situation with doctors in Belarus. I probably, as I'm working in healthcare, I probably don't know any country in the world where there is enough doctors. But you remember it was right after the COVID, so many of them died during the COVID. And then he started firing them, hundreds of them. So we decided, okay, why won't we build a telemedicine platform hiring these doctors and letting people get the consultations at least online.
Yeah, through technology.
Yeah, and that worked perfectly. The other case was he've been recalling licenses from lawyers because they've been supporting activists and democratic forces. And the very same story, forked the telemedicine platform and put lawyers there instead of the doctors, and they're doing this consultancy online. And then the online education the same way, and then we've built some tools to support business and culture and so on and so forth. And I'll be talking about it on the conference, and Vetlana is going to be talking about the conference. At a certain point, we thought like, okay, we have pretty all of the attributes of the state, except of the territory. Why don't we go for the digital state? If we can provide people with all of the services that government should, and we can do it, yeah, we have to replace this government that is failed and it's not providing services anymore. And here we need a financial system, and we can't use the traditional financial system because the banks are totally controlled by Lukashenko's regime.
So you're trying to create like a digital democracy,
Exactly.
right? Instead of the dysfunctional democracy, so to speak,
Exactly.
that your country had. And so is the goal really to overthrow him?
Totally.
I mean,
and reclaim the territory.
why is it so difficult, I guess, to do that? If so many people are oppressed and unhappy and starving and want a better life, why is it so difficult to overthrow a leader like that?
There are 3 points. He built a structure of power, of political power in the country, which is extremely tightly controlled by him from the very top, from the national level to the local communities. And it's still tough one. The second point is police and special forces. It's totally controlled by him. They are well paid, and they are repressing any kind of opposition. And the third point is Vladimir Putin, who is supporting him with funds, who's supporting him in many different ways. And recently we have Russian tanks and missiles and jet fighters based in Belarus, which basically brought us to the point of the military occupation of the country. And comparing to Ukrainians, we don't have our own government inside of the country we could trust and who could back us up. We don't have weapons. We don't have our own economy yet. We still have to build it. So basically, we are fighting them bare-handed, which is quite difficult.
Well, you're fighting them through technology almost, which is really interesting. For the viewers out there that have obviously heard about the Ukraine crisis, and maybe some of them have donated or tried to help, why aren't we hearing about Belarus? Why is that not covered in the media as much?
I guess it was. It was during 2020, 2021. Obviously, comparing to the war crisis and what's happening in Ukraine, it's very difficult to compete in the media field. But yeah, I don't know how well it was covered in States. But in Europe, it was quite a big thing for a long time, especially when Lukashenko hijacked a Ryanair jet in May 2021. So it's a commercial jet, been flying from Athens, one EU capital, to Vilnius, another EU capital. And Lukashenko hijacked it with a fighter jet. And it was a huge scandal in Europe. So yeah, he's been doing his best to keep media attention quite high. And then he brought artificial migrant crisis. So he's been bringing thousands of migrants from the Middle East by planes to Minsk, and then pushing them physically through the Polish border, through the EU border.
Wow.
So yeah, he's been doing lots of stupid stuff lately.
Wow. Well, I have to say, I follow media coverage in the U.S. pretty closely, and the Belarus crisis is not covered the way that Ukraine is right now, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to ask. And I'm kind of curious your thoughts, because we're at a human rights conference, and we're hearing from many people who are dissidents, and there are so many oppressive regimes, like we take for granted if we live in the Western world sometimes, how brutal and violent and just quite frankly terrible leaders in other countries are. Just out of curiosity, how do you think that something like that happens? Do you think that there are people who are just evil, that just don't care the type of harm that they inflict on others? Or is it something that it slowly corrupts from within, and all of a sudden, years later, it's turned into something that was completely separate from how it all began?
It doesn't happen in a day. I don't know what kind of example to give it here, but imagine that you can enter a bank vault every day and take some cash out of there, and no one will notice. So probably first day you'll take $20, next day you'll take 50. In a couple of years, you'll take a couple of millions, and then you're totally abusing the system. So when there is no control, and when the system is not balanced, anyone can go crazy, and that's what exactly happening with Lukashenko and Putin. They are keeping absolute power for decades, and that's not only them. North Korea guys, Cuba, Syria, Iran. There are lots of examples of non-democratic states which are ending pretty in the same way. Because when you are not controlled by the society, when all of you caring is your own power, you start abusing it very soon. And that actually was a pretty scary moment with Trump several years ago in the US, because he really looked like a guy who can go this way. And if US go the authoritarian way, then the whole of the world is in trouble.
Oh, that is a very divisive topic for sure. That is the number one thing that I think divides our whole country is now red and blue, red versus blue.
Yeah, let's keep it aside then. But from our perspective, from what we see in our country and what we see in Russia and all of the region, it looked pretty scary. The second term that he ran. So yeah, just my opinion.
So where do you see this all going? How do you see this playing out? Because it's clearly very difficult to take down leadership that is very well funded and backed up by a country like Russia. And cryptocurrencies are just an emerging technology that probably not many of the citizens in Belarus know about. So how do you actually, where does this go? Take me to the next, year, 5, 10 years.
They obviously have weak spots. And technology is definitely a weak spot for them. Because maybe the biggest dream for an authoritarian leader is to isolate his country from the rest of the world, and then he can do inside whatever he wants. But you can't isolate technology. As long as you have free internet access, you can communicate to people wherever they are. You can do business with them. You can transfer funds. You can transfer knowledge. You can do lots of stuff. And then you kind of became part of the free world, and authoritarian leader is not a leader for you anymore. You don't need him. why Putin and Lukashenko are staying such a long time in power, because they're doing their best to keep people as poor as possible, and then people feel dependent on them. Someone compares this with home abuse and home violence. They act exactly the same way. You become loyal to your abuser. Yeah. But as soon as you're well educated and you earn good enough on your own, you don't need your abuser anymore.
Right.
You're a free person. So what we have to do, and we believe that's the only way, is to build up the technology, spread it around the people, give them opportunity to study, to get new jobs, online jobs, or get a proper education and move to some other countries for the jobs, to make country as open as possible, even in these circumstances. And then bad guys have no chance.
Well, just to kind of wrap up, this might be the first time that people are hearing about both your organization, but also how this crisis is playing out right now in real time. So, final thoughts. What do you want the final takeaway message to be, and how can people help if they want to donate or provide some kind of assistance?
Yeah, of course, people can donate, and you're very welcome to donate. But I'd probably say some more general stuff. I believe everyone dreamed of being some kind of superhero. And probably the sexiest superhero these days is an Iron Man. Not a Superman, not a Batman is also quite good. But yeah, Iron Man. And his superpower is in his knowledge and in his technology. So in order to make, oh my God, I'm gonna say world a better place, but yeah, I'll say it out loud. Yeah, in order to make the society around us better, and the place we live in, your country, your city, neighboring countries, or countries on the other continent, invest in technologies, develop technologies, share technologies, provide technologies to one who need them most, and it will do the job.
That's great. And is there a story behind your white rabbit?
Yeah, it is. He joined me in September 2020. I just saw it in a store, and the whole situation was so unrealistic that sometimes I've been thinking, yeah, maybe we're living in some kind of matrix or some kind of this stupid stuff. And yeah, I decided to buy it and bring with me everywhere to remind myself that the rabbit hole could be quite deep, and we have to find the way all the way down and then back up.
I love that. I love the metaphor because it's the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but also you're sort of pulling a rabbit out of a hat if you manage to achieve this digital state and overthrow the current one. So Jaroslav, thank you so much for joining me, and you are watching Okcoin Live. We'll also put a link to your organization in the description of this episode. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.